Welcome back to another episode, GP Podcast.
GPPD podcast.
It's the same difference.
It's your first couple of times.
Yeah, it's my first
day.
time. Yeah, it's my first day. All right, so I'm here with Nate, and we got Dylan here with us today. So we're going to get into some crazy stuff, I can assure you, because we've already been talking. Also, we are hiring, we need detention staff. We need communication staff. So if you're interested in 911 dispatchers or working in the jail, please log on. Pay scale is on there, the requirements on there, all of that good stuff. So I feel like I just rambled.
Now, if you're not sure if you're interested in one of those things, we also have past episodes that we've done with people that fill those positions you can listen to and kind of get an idea from them.
Yeah, check it out.
It's good, yeah.
Okay, so I don't know a whole lot about Mr. Dyllon, so I'm going to throw a whole bunch of questions at you, but I appreciate you coming on. So let me know, how did you get started in police work?
Just police work in general.
Yeah. Are you a lateral?
I'm not a lateral, I'm a basic. I came right out of college. Police work was not the... It wasn't like, I was born and I was like running around in the police uniform and costumes. Like, it was part of like I wanted a job. I knew I wanted to do first responder or something.
Oh, okay.
Like in high school, I'm from New Hampshire and grew up in New Hampshire.
Jeez.
I was looking at like a volunteer fire department just to fill my time with something to do.
Yeah.
Because my mom was dating somebody who was a firefighter, and that just seemed fun. The pager thing, it was just like, I'm bored. Like a pager, like volunteer firefighters, they'll have a pager, and so they don't have a radio, and so if something goes off, they'll page them. So you go to the fire station and all that good stuff.
So you're aging yourself. I'm like, damn.
Yeah.
I thought you were a lot younger than me.
I'm a lot younger than you. I don't know about you, but definitely Nate. So the first responder thing was like interesting to me.
Yeah.
I guess being nosy, knowing what was going on. So
that makes so much sense. I know him a little better than you do, but that makes complete
you just like to know what's going on, right? And then so the first responder or being a firefighter, I just didn't know. So, and I was always doing things on my own. Mm-hmm. I wasn't like an abandoned child or anything, but my mom, single mom, worked by a lot, owned her own business. We just there's a lot of like navigating on my own. And so what happened is I went to college. My freshman year in New Hampshire, that didn't pan out. Mm-hmm. My dad lived here in Texas, so I moved here to Texas.
Oh, okay.
Went to school, went for criminal justice, which was just like a catch-all blanket. Mm-hmm. Maybe thought it would be easy to do, honestly.
I was told to do that if you wanted to party.
Well, I went to a Baptist school. So there wasn't much partying in that sense, but
I disagree. But go ahead.
Well, okay, so the partying at the Baptist school looked different than the school I went to in New Hampshire.
Okay.
So one thing led to another. My uncle actually works here. He's been here for like 30 years. Mm-hmm. Roy,
here in Texas,
the department.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I didn't grow up knowing him.
Okay.
So I ended up going through the criminal justice program, and that school actually had a collegiate, like they called it the Law Enforcement Academic Alternative Program. It's a mouthful. Okay. But what it is a college can get licensed by TCOL to teach students and license them as Texas peace officers.
No kidding.
It's essentially going through the academy, but in a 2-year span over your coursework.
Oh, okay.
So, for
it's almost
example,
like an ROTC type program for the military.
Kind of, but you're legit being licensed. So every class you took, I went through the whole academy in college. Uh-huh. So I got tased, I got pepper sprayed, I got driving instruction, shooting instruction.
Okay, wait.
And what college?
What college is this?
This is available in Texas. This is an option that colleges can offer. I went to East Texas Baptist University.
ETBU, okay.
Out in Marshall. And there was an instructor there that was very passionate about getting law enforcement into the educational system so that kids can have a track into law enforcement instead of just I want a job.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's to foster this and like allow you to arrive at the job fully prepared. And so over the last 2 years of my degree there, I'm starting to get licensed.
Yeah.
And by the time I graduate, I have all my hours, and I'm now like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Where do I go?
Were you licensed at the time?
I was not licensed because I had not taken the test.
Oh, gotcha.
But I had all the course training leading up to the test.
That's cool.
So basically, I would have to find an agency to pick up a commission.
Right.
And then they would, like, I would take the test and then they would hire me.
Okay.
If I was to go to like Marshall PD,
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah,
or
smaller.
Tyler PD, maybe some of these smaller PDs, that would happen. But then I, in college, worked at a bed and breakfast. It's no longer there, but I was a waiter. And thank you. One day, somebody came in, and it was at the time, obviously, I didn't know, it was a retired Grand Prairie officer.
Yeah.
It was a retired Grand Prairie sergeant, Alan Patton. I don't know if any of you know him, but he was pretty, I don't know if influential is the word, but a lot of people know him. He was of the older group of people that are no longer here anymore. But he came in with his wife. I'm waiting on him. He's asked me about school, what I'm doing, getting to know each other, which is odd because it's not the place where you normally talk to your waiter about that stuff, but we just hit it off.
Well, that's kind of weird for cops, too.
Right. So, and he's all the way out here in the middle of nowhere. And so I'm talking to him, and when I say that I'm getting into law enforcement, he asked me where, and I said, well, because at this time I started looking into Grand Prairie.
Yeah.
I didn't look into anywhere else. I kind of just decided Grand Prairie was it.
How?
My uncle, Roy.
Oh, yeah,
so he
that's
just
right,
kept
that's
saying,
right. Yeah.
you know, hey, Grand Prairie, Grand Prairie. Funny enough, my instructor in college was like, you don't want to go to Grand Prairie.
Really?
Because he was of a way different, like he was probably 70. So he knew Grand Prairie in a different way.
Okay, you tell that instructor when you see him again, I'm gonna kick
Well, I don't know
his-
if he's around anymore.
Oh, okay, I'm just playing.
That's possible.
But right, so he had a different opinion, and so he was like, maybe you look at other places. My uncle was saying, come to Grand Prairie. So I was like, yeah, I'll look into
But
it.
you have family on Dallas as well. Was there like a competing narrative?
I had no idea who that other. I do.
Oh, okay.
Joe was worked for Dallas PD,
Right.
but I didn't really ever know him.
Oh, okay.
You know, I knew Roy a little bit better, but again, didn't really know him much at the time. But he dropped that bug, put that bug in my ear. I start the process, and so all this to say, I'm talking to Alan Patton, and I'm like, well, I'm looking into Grand Prairie, and he just goes, he like drops his head, and he goes, "Are you kidding me?" And I'm like, what? Because
Did I say something wrong?
my instructor was like, don't go there. So I was like,
where are y'all
what
at?
is wrong with Grand Prairie?
At the time?
Like
We're at
Marsh-
Stillwater Inn in Jefferson, Texas, which is right up the road from where I was.
How far away is that from here?
This is East Texas. This
Like
is almost the
2.5
border
hours?
of
Oh,
Texas
Louisiana.
and into
Okay.
Louisiana.
Yeah, 3 hours. Yeah.
And so he goes, he reaches into his wallet and he takes out his wallet and it's his badge and he goes, I'm retired from there.
That's cool.
He goes, what a God moment. Like, he's like, this is insane. It's blowing his mind.
Yeah.
He's like looking over his wife and his wife's like mouth to the floor.
Yeah.
And so from that point, I really think like it was pretty clear. I mean, I didn't apply to anywhere else. I was hopeful to get the job. I mean, I'm right out of college. I don't know what to expect. So he's like, I'm going to put in. He has no idea who I am. Not a clue. Never met him before. And he goes, well, I'm going to put in a good word for you. Alan Patton.
Okay. Gotcha.
And he put in, I guess, a good enough word to where I at least get the opportunity to come and do the oral boards. And then, it just was one thing after the next.
Yeah.
But I could see it and I understand it because officers, we are a pretty good read of character and it don't take us long. I could talk to you for about 2 minutes and go, yeah, this is somebody I can deal with, and now you you need to kick rocks. So
I'm assuming I gave him a good impression.
yeah.
It probably helped that he knew my uncle who also worked here.
Yeah.
You know, they spent a lot of time together back when they were in the midst of their career.
Cool. It's a weird small world.
Very small. So I was, you know, for me, that's how that happened. Like law enforcement wasn't initially what I wanted to do. I kind of was in this funnel, right? I was like, I have no idea. I just want to, I guess, graduate college because that's what we're supposed to do.
Right, yeah.
I moved from New Hampshire where I grew up down to here, and I'm, you know, going through my personal stuff with, you know, with my dad and things like that. I come finish school and the funnel starts getting closer, you know, and then the focus just was, it was pretty clear at that point.
Yeah. So I want to go back because I want to go up to New Hampshire and do like some hunting.
Sure.
How, like, this got to be a drastic change.
Like you want to actually hunt animals, or you want to hunt
this?
Why I'm like, what are we hunting?
Oh yeah, animals.
Okay. Well, I'm like, I thought you meant like unpack why I'm from New Hampshire or something. I guess
I was kind of curious.
I was like,
yeah, like, well,
because like of all it occurs to me, we can talk about it in a second. But first of all, is there hunting in New Hampshire?
Yeah.
In my mind, it's all like just city.
No, it's a lot of woods.
It's
yeah.
a lot of
Really?
woods, bro.
Yeah, very very rural parts.
Yeah.
You need to get out. For somebody as smart as you, come on, read a book.
Thanks, appreciate it.
But yeah, so
Yeah, of all the hanging out and talking we've done, I don't think I'd know exactly why you were in New Hampshire. Like,
well, so there's a lot to my life, like that. Just is what it is, right? My life isn't perfect. No one's is, but there's
Mine
just a
is.
lot of. I know you're pretty perfect.
Yeah.
There's a lot of perfect people here in Grand Prairie, but
just ask them.
so I was born in Georgia. As I don't ever remember living there. I think I was 1.5 when my mom moved to New Hampshire.
Okay.
So my mom was single, and I was raised in New Hampshire. So there was a lot of like my family was me, my mom, and my brother.
Okay.
And then like she had a husband, and that, you know, she had several husbands and stuff like that. But she was a business
At
owner.
once, or?
Yeah. No. Love Tammy, but no. Her relationships were up and down.
Yeah.
We were, you know, dragged here and there. I think honestly, I not too long ago looked back and we moved like upwards of 16, 17 times.
Oh, wow.
And you're not military. She's not military.
Not military. So yeah, we moved around. So things were stable, and then they weren't, right? And then so no fault of her own. She just had to do what she had to do, and she was a business owner, and she tried all the things, and so that I have a lot of exposure to different, I guess, echelons of life, which, you know, bringing it back to police is 100% is why I'm supposed to be doing this job as a police officer. Like, there's a lot of different officers, but I think, you know, really good ones do have experience outside, like
you could
the
deal with
hardships,
anybody.
the things like that, right?
Yeah, you can deal with anybody.
So yeah, New Hampshire. It's where I was raised, and then I moved to Texas because my dad lived in Texas. Yeah. So he was military, and I think that's where my mom met him, and right. So his family's from here. So yeah.
So look, I'm glad he didn't give us that. Oh, I knew I wanted to be a police officer ever since I was 4 years old. And da-da-da-da.
Some people, it's like that. I mean, I knew I wanted to like run around and just be like, again, the nosy person and like,
what you doing?
I was like, well, what's going on? You know, the rubberneckers, and it's like, you know, we all want to know what's going on.
You know, you put past an accident, like I want to pull over.
I want to know
and,
every
like,
detail.
Find out their name.
What is like, why, you know?
Right.
So I just knew like more of a service oriented person, and so I'm glad it ended up in law enforcement. But I didn't. It wasn't like, what do you want to be? And I'm like, a cop. And then like, you know, I don't have a history of police. Well, other than my uncle, right? I do have a family that are police officers, but I didn't know until I was already well on my way into being a cop.
Okay.
Because I didn't grow up with knowing my dad's side of the family. So my uncle that worked here.
That makes sense.
You know, I didn't grow up with him or knowing him.
And
that
the other
well.
one is dad's side as well. As him? Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you had have a brother. So your family now, are they like on board with, no, we're glad you're a police officer? Because I always ask, because my dad still asks me to this day, you like doing that job? Okay, I've been doing it for a while.
Yeah. So again, my family, as I get older, I feel like there's another sibling that gets added to the mix.
Okay, Mike, a little bit closer.
So I have a full brother, same mom and dad. Mm-hmm. When I was in 6th grade, I met my sister on my mom's side.
Okay.
I'm about to learn something I forgot.
Yeah. So my mom I have a sister on my mom's side. And then my dad, when he started coming around, I didn't meet him till I was older. Mm-hmm. He ended up having 3 kids of his own. Mm-hmm. And then within the last 3 years, I've learned that I have another sister on my dad's side.
What?
Yeah. So I got siblings.
Papa was.
Did your dad just find out that you also had a sibling?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
Well, he knew, but like he didn't.
Yeah, kept it away.
Didn't know.
Right.
Her. She never was around.
That's crazy.
So
he was he was checking all the military stereotypes.
Yeah.
It happens.
I'm not. There's nothing to be ashamed of with that.
Yeah.
There's no way that I should be.
No,
it's not my life.
Bro,
But
if you dug into anybody's family, I guarantee I could tell you something here, and you go, "Holy Katie, I never knew."
Yeah. So, like with all that to say, like my core family growing up was my mom and my brother.
Right.
Yeah.
But then as you get older and life starts to happen, and people again get curious. I feel like my mom. I probably got the curiosity from my mom because she's a pretty curious person. But she's very supportive.
Yeah.
Of everything.
Yeah.
And my dad, we don't talk anymore.
Right. Yeah.
I don't have a relationship with him.
Yeah.
And that's for different reasons. I don't know where to start with that. There's a lot to that. But go ahead.
I was going to ask, do you feel like, because one of the things we always preach as far as getting into this profession is support system. Obviously, you're lacking some of that. Mm-hmm. So, do you feel like that has caused more hurdles for you especially in the beginning? Because you've been doing this for several years now, but in the beginning, you didn't have the expanded network of family like a lot of people do.
Right.
Was that harder whenever you would come up on issues in police work as you're adjusting to the new lifestyle, or no?
I think I had been going through life with such a limited support system at that point already that I had come up with my own way to handle that. And what that looked like was, people fall back on their support system, which traditionally I suppose is their family. Mm-hmm. I became really good at fostering friendships with people, and then the friends became family. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So wherever I went and wherever I go, it usually involves, creating some type of circle of people. And sometimes people have just that one good best friend. I've always operated on, it doesn't hurt to have many. Mm-hmm. And that's how I've had to kind of be. And so that would be what I end up falling back on is friends.
Do you find that you have mostly law enforcement, or do you do you think it's important to
when
make
I first started this job, I only had cop friends.
Right.
Over the years, that's since changed only because, you start to realize, like, as important and fun as this job is, it's not my entire
It's not your
being,
life.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's it would be very easy to get caught up in working the overtime, doing different, units, programs, honor guard, like all these things that you can just make yourself busy to help, make you feel prideful, and that's all good stuff. But I've since taken a step back, I prioritize work and be the professional I am here, but have to also live outside, and that's the challenge in finding that balance.
You have to, because I'm gonna touch on a point. So a lot of times we come in and we'll go, okay, so let me work patrol for a few years. And then you say, okay, well, let me join this specialized unit. And so what people, especially outside listeners, you need to know that you can have your 40 hours a week job, and then you're going to have another specialized unit. And next thing you know, no, I'm going to hang out with these officer friends, quote unquote. And your whole life is then, surrounded
Encompassed
by police.
by
Just
police.
police.
Yeah.
The extra jobs alone, especially here, holy crap. You can log on right now, and I guarantee there's 50 jobs holding, just waiting on somebody to take them.
Right.
And I'm with you. You got to do something different.
And I've found, though, that while there's maybe nothing wrong with that inherently, having just cop friends, because those are people that understand you. Mm-hmm. They understand when you say, we had this crazy foot pursuit, and like they legitimately get the adrenaline spike. Mm-hmm. They get the why it's exciting. Mm-hmm. Some people are like, cool, you found like crack, or you found a gun under someone's seat. It's like, good job, but like some of those things are what aren't fun to other people are fun to cops. So you want to still have those relationships for sure. Mm-hmm. Where the problem I've seen is that you start to isolate people maybe that you were friends with, and then you lose relationships that were important because you're like, well, you just don't get it.
Yeah, you don't
So let me just stay over here. And then sometimes that can just escalate into just like, because you stay into that comfortable, stressful place that we all like to, like the place of chaos, which I think some of us like to be in because that's how we operate best.
Yeah. I think it, because policing, obviously we're made up of the community. We're diverse, and if you listen to the podcast at all, it's surprising the diverse backgrounds that a lot of people come from. But once you get in this profession, I think you're molded, and your worldview is shaped so much by our experiences being cops that we evolve and wind up becoming more and more similar than we start out. And so then you're only have this one worldview, this one perspective on things, and sometimes, just given what we deal with, a lot of times that's negative. So I think it's super important to have civilian friends because it
pulls you out a little bit of
kind of that
back
bubble,
to
right? It just like I can't don't want to go down and check the mail without a gun on you,
right?
And it's like the other your civilian friends like, what are you?
You're like,
doing?
That's a little paranoid,
yeah,
and they're like,
insane.
Like, but worst case scenario, right? We operate on worst case scenario, and I'm glad you brought that up because a week ago I was talking about that exact same thing with somebody, and I brought up the fact that, and it didn't take long. What I realized, and you don't see it coming, and I'm not saying that this is a bad thing, right?
Like the mailbox ambush, or
being ambushed. No, I'm talking about the actual change of people in law enforcement. And I'm sure it happens in the fire world and paramedics and things like that. But obviously we're cops, so
it's easier to bond over napping. So.
A full belly and a nap. I had a family member say shortly after I graduated and hit the street after FTO, and I went back to visit family, and they were like, and she said, "Man, you're different." And I looked at her and I was like, "What do you mean?" Because I don't feel different. I feel great. I probably felt the greatest I've ever felt my entire life. Physically, pumped that I had this job.
Right.
But she goes, "You're different. Like, you changed. Being a cop changed you." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" I didn't understand at the time. And I don't think she meant it in a bad way, but she saw what may have been this happy-go-lucky, foolish person, maybe more restraint, right? And 7.5 years later, I'm kind of looking back at that moment, and I'm like, well, that is wild, because I'm now realizing, I have changed, not in a bad way. But it's crazy to ignore the fact that, like you said, our experiences kind of slowly over time make you a little bit more paranoid. Just in the way of like bringing a gun to the mailbox. Yeah. I'm not that paranoid. I think you're the only person here that, no.
It was a theoretical.
Okay. No, I've seen it. But I think it's important to notice that it's not something to be afraid of, but when you have people outside your circle to call you on certain things, if you have changed, is important. Because if you're with people that get each other, you're going to see each other as, you're not going to see that person has changed because you're like, what do you mean? We're all kind of in the same mentality. So,
well, even if you don't, even if it's not a relationship that's as direct as calling you out per se,
sure,
but just seeing that, just seeing the way normal people act, and being like, hey, these are my friends, instead of, oh yeah, that's a dumbass.
And it's refreshing not to, like, I know that you work in CID and you have your own caseload and things that you attack in the city and things like that, but it's refreshing not to have to go to hang out with, like, we hang out on the weekends and things like that, and we're not going to be talking about the car chase. Sometimes we do.
That's why we hang out on the weekends. I wouldn't hang out with you otherwise.
Because we talk about work at work a lot.
Yeah.
And as you know, when you go home, you have a caseload still, but to have to talk about the suspect, I mean, come on.
It's like not getting off of work. You might as well just.
And some people love that, and that's okay. But because I used to be that way. I used to be that way first,
in the first couple years. Yeah.
And then it became, I'll give you 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Good to see you. What's new? Oh, that's crazy. That was wild. All right. What else are we doing? So,
where you walk up like, you're not gonna believe what the sergeant did, and I'm like,
I was like, okay, I'll listen to that one, but again, you have 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's where the nosiness comes out.
Yeah. Okay. What more? What started?
That's funny.
So I think, though, in terms, like, relating it to police work, going back to the support system and the people who are not cops, like, those are important things to realize. Yeah. So if somebody's watching this or listening to it and it's like, what is it like to be a cop, or what do you because I think you've asked other people, like, did this meet your expectations, or what did you expect? Is this everything you've expected? And I don't know, no matter what the topic is, I don't think that's for me, it's not a question that I ever can answer, because my expectations going into things are, like, very low. I think just because when I first got into this job, I actually almost didn't stay here.
Really?
Like, and I don't know as if it was an expectation thing, but I almost quit.
Like to go to
in
another
FTO,
PD,
just in general.
Oh.
Because maybe my expectations just, I didn't have one. And so I think somebody previously had mentioned that it was intense. Like, getting here, being a cop, you know and you hear and you see what being a cop could be like. And then when you're actually doing it, knowing and doing are like two totally different things. And so in FTO, this was right around the Dallas shootings.
Right.
Which was heavily, like, emphasized in the NMI Academy.
Just for anybody not familiar, it's the shootings on July 7th of 16.
Yes.
16, yeah, where 5 officers were killed downtown.
Yeah. So it was around that time. I was on nights. Never had been, like, on the night shift of anything. And
yeah, never?
No. I mean, I came right out of college. Like, I started this job when I was 22. Not to say I didn't have world experience. I definitely had plenty of that. But in terms of professional and work experience, I've done.
We don't get off till 6. That's the difference. So bars close at 2. That's different than getting off at 6.
And my jobs leading up to that was, like, service industry, waiting tables, or I was on, like, working a grounds crew. So you don't know. And when I first got cut loose, I'm in FTO, and, like, one of my first calls is around New Year's, and it's like a shooting. His friend shot him in the back in the car. They had an argument over a cell phone, and I'm like, are people really shooting each other? Like, what you didn't know before this job and what you know now is, like, insane.
And it's
a little bit of innocence lost, but it's nothing. I think it's made me a better person. But in the time, I was like, I don't know. Right. This seems a little
I didn't sign up
too much.
Because, like, you go through, like, Grand Prairie is a nice city. Like, you drive, you would never imagine that things happen. And it's true, because, like, I'll have people ask me, is this a nice neighborhood? Or they'll drive to a neighborhood. Hey, this neighborhood looks nice. And I'm like, you have no idea what happens inside the walls of all the houses that are around you. If you're not staring at that house when the squad car pulls up, is there for 30 minutes to 45 minutes and leaves, you have no idea. Someone could have gotten arrested. Like, there's so many things that can happen and do happen in every single city in this country. It's wild.
And I felt like it all happened pretty quickly, and I was tired. Like, night shift, 12-hour shifts is tough.
Yeah.
But I've become to, like, I prefer the 12-hour shifts.
Oh, God, yes.
For sure. But in the moment, I'm like, even thinking, maybe I'll just go into the detention center, you know?
Right.
Just because I'm like, do I want to risk my life? And it just, I guess it became reality.
Yeah.
And it's a point to like check in. And I am very thankful because at that time, I was pulled from shift, and my direct supervisor, Sergeant Anguiano, he, as scary and grumpy as he can look
I love that guy.
and be, pulled me and made it a point to get me to then Lieutenant Fleming, who was over our shift. And between the two
Also
of
not
them,
like the most
also
cuddly.
right, which I think was perfect because it's my perception. I still didn't know what to expect, even though I was going through all these things. These two people who aren't the most cuddly people made it a point to say, you're going to go home tonight. This isn't because you're being punished. This isn't because you can't do this job. You just need to go home. And they gave me materials to like just review and help me just process that. What is it going to mean to be a cop? And am I ready to put my life on the line for people that I don't know?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the next day I came back and I was like, that was the start, right? It wasn't like overnight.
Oh, yeah, I'm good.
I was like, okay, never mind. That was crazy. But and then I've had several people that along the way that would check in. And I thought that was like the craziest thing that people would want to pour that much into me. And before I knew it, I was working overtime.
Right.
And Lieutenant Fleming was like, I can't get you out of this place.
Right.
You know, so I think it's important to realize that coming into this job, you have one expectation. It could change, and it could change your mind, and you're like, you know what, this just isn't for me.
Yeah.
But to have the people, and I think Grand Prairie still, this exists to where we'll help you figure out if it's right or not.
Yeah.
Because it's not only for your own safety, but the safety of the people that work here and the people that you're serving.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's a benefit, I think, to the size of our department, too, because it's not the big city where it's just, okay, if
just
you
a
don't
number.
cut it. Or like just a toxic FTO culture where it's like, I say toxic, I mean, it's just the way it used to be, where it's like your goal is to get rid of them. And if they, if you survive me, then cool, you get to be
You
a
can
cop.
survive the streets.
As opposed to, they
if that
small
was
department,
15 years ago, they would probably booted me out the back door and said, "Don't come back here, dude."
Well, they
you
wouldn't
doing?"
even talk twice. Or even a different city, like
Right.
someone where you're just a number.
We don't have time for this.
Yeah.
And so for that, I'm thankful that, we Grand Prairie, I mean, that was 7.5-ish or whatever years ago. Yeah, that was a pretty big thing.
Yeah.
Coming into cop work. So my expectations were that I didn't have expectations. And a lot of it's learning along the way. And
Yeah. this is there.
Well,
Learn
and
to
that's
go.
what I was gonna say too. Part of what you brought up, like my personality, if someone pulled me aside and told me, "Hey, whether I'm having doubts or whatever the thing is, hey, you need to go home and think about things," dude, I would be in such a terrible place. I'm like, whole.
I had a lot of mental
Well, the thing is though,
concerns, not mental concerns. Like I was concerned about my mental health, but I was
Right.
like running through my head, like, did I just mess up?
yeah, for
And-
sure. But the thing is, like that's not a perfect experience. Like when you start the application or FTO process, you never would have said, "I'm probably going to get sent home at some point," for just to think things over,
Right,
whatever
right.
the case is. But just like I think we all have stories, especially from FTO, where it just does not go according to plan.
Right.
And I think that's a big thing coming in is don't think you're going to show up and everything is going to go great.
Right.
It's not. This
It's
job is
not,
not
and it
natural.
shouldn't.
It's not. No one, I don't think, is wired to automatically be good at the job. If you are, you're a psychopath. Like you should.
We should probably send you back to the psych.
It should be out of the ordinary to live in a world where you're gonna just have to deal with people and detain them and take away freedom and deal with fights and shootings and stuff like that.
Well, and from the very beginning, a lot of the things that's told to us in the academy and almost from the get-go is like, if you or figure that you've learned everything, that's a dangerous spot to be in.
Oh, very much.
Because once you stop learning, you're done.
Yeah.
Like you can't be in that
away
mode.
from me.
Yeah. So that's a long way of saying that's how I got to Grand Prairie.
No, I think every officer has had that experience, though.
As far as what?
Like having to be pulled aside and talked to or given advice or, you know, hey, go home and think about it. Yeah. It happened to me. And thank God.
They were like, KD, stop hitting people.
Yeah.
It was another officer pulled me to the side.
Sure.
He was like, hey, I know you come from somewhere else, but let me tell you X, Y, Z.
Were you a lateral?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was like, oh. Because I remember thinking, man, everybody's going to jail but me. You know, I'm looking for a crack with a gun.
Sure.
And he was like, if you know somebody has multiple warrants, you may want to take them. And I was like, no, I'm looking for something else.
Yeah.
You know, and that's
different.
That's what's interesting too. Is I mean, I started out as a basic, so I had no previous law enforcement. If I was to go, which I'm not, but to go to a different agency, if we had to. It would be a whole different process. Like it wouldn't even compare to how I became a cop here, right? Because you already know you're like, look, you know what? You're looking for the guns. You're looking for this, and so to the laterals who are trying to come to Grand Prairie, I can't speak to it, but I would imagine you got to adopt the culture to a degree here, and
there's different standards because like where we came from, report writing is way different there than it is here. And when I first got here, I tried to do the very basic
nuts and bolts of
report. And you've read reports from where I'm from when you're in CID, and so you know what it's like. And you get here and you do that.
I've actually completed reports and whole cases from other agencies, but we won't digress.
But yeah, no, it's just being willing to adapt to the small, because police work is police work, but everywhere is going to have different little things that they do or require, and to be able to say, hey, okay, cool, I'm here now. This is what I'm adopting your culture. That's huge.
Yeah.
But I don't want to keep harping on the same thing. But so you hired on, you go to patrol. You're a little bit more unique from what at least the outside perception is of police work, in that you patrol, you go CID. Now you're back in patrol voluntarily. You didn't get kicked out.
Right. Let the record show.
Right.
It was voluntary.
So you actually talk about that a little bit as far as going to CID and then.
Yeah, so I consider myself lucky because there was a time in which there was this standards where when you get on patrol, you graduate out to FTO, you're on probation, usually you're on patrol for a good minute. Usually nights, 5-ish, 6 years before you go anywhere else.
Right.
And during that same time, I'm on patrol. I'm cut loose already, loving it. I'm on nights, and some openings had started coming up. And what was told to me is, when you're interested in something, at least put in your letter so that people can see your name. Show your interest, and if you're likely not going to get it, but at least it shows that initiative.
It gives you kind of a dry run on the process.
A dry run, sure. It gets you, knocks off the dust and things like that.
Yeah.
That's what I did. And it went well. It
didn't go as planned.
It didn't, because I didn't fully expect to get it.
Right.
I had the interest in domestic crimes. A couple people had talked to me about it, but I was like, sure, I'll put in a letter. I did have interest, so why not?
Yeah.
And it was up against me and another Dyllon for the spot. Well, a property spot opened up, so Dyllon Sullivan went over to property, and I went. They were like, well, we need to fill this domestic spot.
My brain short.
You want
I was
it?
like, I don't know another Dyllon, but yeah, I do.
There's two others.
I was going to say there's two others.
So at the time, Sergeant Paulson goes, well, your interview was good. We liked you. Do you want this spot? And I said, sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, because even though I wasn't expecting to get it, I still wanted it.
Yeah.
And so I got the spot, and what an adjustment that was.
Because you're just now kind of coming around to getting adjusted to
patrol.
high-speed patrol stuff. Now you're slowing down, going domestics.
Yeah. So, right, we're ramping up speed. We're on patrol, we're running around, having fun. And I oftentimes you find people that are leaving patrol because they've had that patrol fun, that patrol experience, and maybe they're ready for something new.
Yeah.
There might be some other people that just want to kind of get out of patrol and for schedule reasons, and they do have interests in investigations. So I wasn't necessarily itching to get out of patrol.
Yeah.
So I go up to CID. We have a good time, like a trial by fire on some of these things.
Yeah.
You learn how to write warrants, and you start to review other officers' reports. And for me, that was a little challenging because I feel like I'm this child in a sense, right? I'm a new officer, and I'm getting older officers' reports, and I'm tasked with making those decisions of like follow-up questions.
Yeah.
Why'd you do this?
Right.
Who are you?
Yeah, exactly.
New guy.
Yeah.
So that was sort of an adjustment, but I found a way to do it in a respectful way. Like, there's no reason that I need to come at you three different ways and make you mad and all this stuff. So I did my 2 years. There's a 2-year commitment to that. And if I'm being honest, it's just I learned so much, and I'm a better patrol officer for it.
Oh, I'm sure.
I just was ready to go back and get back into the squad car. Because with domestics, it's the officers who are going out to these scenes who are almost the like first and last person that talks to those victims.
Right. So
I became a way better officer at investigating those and getting the information then to help with successful prosecution of cases. So I was itching to kind of get back to patrol and left on good terms, I think.
Yeah.
And so unless if anyone has any other opinions, but
so now that you're back on patrol, and you're kind of ramping the speed back up, if you will. Obviously, I assume you handle it a little better, a little more well adjusted. What do you, in your personal life, like what do you do to, I guess, cope with police work and the stresses?
It's a good question.
It's because you
I'm trying to figure.
You want to say drink.
No, I don't. I don't do that. I don't drink to. I like to really just spend time with other people, and that's a big part of, being away from here. Yeah. I mean, we're busy right now, and just life, and so I think that normally we like to travel, but I've never been a person that, when I ask that question, has a good idea or a good response. Like, it just seems when everyone's like, well, what do you like to do? What are your hobbies? How do you, and I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. When I'm not at work, I'm usually trying not to think about work and probably cleaning the house. Like, I just.
Well, and part of that is the same reason that my hobby situation tends to be kind of limited. I don't know can we go into that as far as the kid situation?
Yeah, for sure.
You're a weird type of new father.
It's not weird.
Okay.
That's adjective. I was gonna say that adjective.
Not weird, but it's out of the ordinary.
It's not.
Because you're a new father, but you're a new father to not newborns.
Okay, yeah. So instead of we'll just get right into it. I guess I didn't give backstory. So we gave backstory about how I got into law enforcement. I'm married.
Married. Okay. How long? How many years? You better know it too. You in trouble.
I'm married 5 years.
You in trouble.
I was at the
Well,
wedding.
okay,
but
so but been together for 10 years.
Okay.
Like we met in college. And so married, I guess let's back up a little bit, just because it gives a little bit of context into police work too. When we talked about support systems, I actually thought that was pretty interesting that was one of the questions in the oral board of like, does your spouse support you? And I was like, I guess,
Never
you know,
asked.
it just wasn't a thing. So I thought that was pretty neat. At least they were genuinely interested. So in college, I met Lane. It was a unique situation, again, because we were at a Baptist school. And this had always been something that I struggled with, right?
the Baptist school, I'm going on a limb and saying had a rule against it. Or a couple.
Yeah,
It was-
a little, yeah.
That was me.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Yeah.
smiled.
Yeah. So grew up kind of not out. I grew up, came here. My dad was a very churchy person. I had a lot of conflicting beliefs. Met Lane, and that just clicked, right? So that was a secret for a while. And I actually almost broke up with him because I didn't think I could be a cop as being open. And there wasn't any particular person that was putting that idea in my head. It was like self-imposed.
Yeah, just you. Yeah.
Because
That was that before you were here?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So as I start gearing up, like in the program that I talked
Right,
about in school, obviously it was a pretty undiscussed thing at school. I'm like, well, how am I going to get a job at Grand Prairie? I didn't know any. I did an internship while in school at a police department, and like I'm like, I don't know.
You think
Can
it's
you be
because
a-
you were going to the law enforcement courses at a religious school that you're just like
No, I
kinda
just I
conflating the
think
two?
that when you look at cops, you're not like you just don't see a lot of outside influences. You just see a cop.
Yeah.
People like to put people in boxes and all this kind of stuff. And if that's one thing I don't fit in, it's a box. Not because physically I'm huge, but because
They make big bucks.
I have a lot of nuance.
Yeah, we just get
I'm moving box. But I just there's so many nuances to things, right? We're in Texas. Like we all just like to make things simplified. I'm the complete opposite of that because while I believe one thing, I also believe another thing, and we've had hours long conversations of certain things. So I just didn't think it was maybe important enough. I thought it would be a hurdle, and I thought this would just hold me back. So let me just get into this job and figure it out. So, like, I just without a partner, without somebody, without.
I'm curious what
'cause
figured
I
it out.
didn't-
What figured it out look like? Are you just gonna look at girls until you like them, or like surprise
No,
them?
until like, or just be single, or just like not discuss.
That's a
who I
wild
am.
level of commitment.
Well, it was, and it was driving me nuts because while I was filling out this like what seemed like a 1,000,000-page application,
It was.
it gets deep, and my biggest fear was not being truthful,
Yeah.
and it got to the point where I was filling this out, and I was like, I left it blank.
Yeah. Do I say
I left it blank.
something? Do I-
We were nearing the end of the college deal, and at that point, we'd been together a couple of years, and like our finances, and it went that deep. Like my stress over it went that deep. Of, well, I'm gonna have to cancel the bank account. Like, and it got to the point where I was like, Lena, I may have to just not. We may have to go separate ways. And I just, it wasn't the department. It wasn't anything. It was a lot of just things that up until that point, I didn't have to handle. I didn't have to think about. I didn't have to deal with. And so one day I just was like, well, if I can't be truthful, and if I can't give it like them all the information, and if I have to skate around certain things, then maybe I don't need to work there.
100%.
And that was the point where I was like, screw it,
Yeah.
you know, and I was like, bottoms up.
Yep.
And so with all that to say, threw his name on there, and it's been great.
Yeah.
a lot of unpacking to say. We're at this point now. We've been married about 5 years.
Yeah.
Obviously cannot have children by natural means. So we're thinking how, do we want kids? And surrogacy is out the window because that's $100,000 that I do not have.
Oh, you get extra jobs.
Yeah, overtime. Private adopt. We spent a good 6 months just looking at how the options work. And my mom grew up in foster care. She was in probably why we moved. A lot of times she was in like 13 different homes, and it just made sense to me to try that first.
Yeah.
And so we opened up to foster care 2.5 years ago. We had 2 placements. They went back with a grandma. We had moved home, so we were closed for a little bit, and then we opened back up, and we got placed with this new case. We had 3. There's 7 and now 8 children in this sibling group. But now we are left with 1. We had her since she was 6 weeks. So she just turned 1. So we've had her for a minute now. And
it has been a while.
Yeah. And so that's our journey right now is takes up a lot of time.
Well, and you're not being like super, I don't know, clear is the right word, but you're like, y'all went from no kids, you just living the life to boom, 3 kids.
So originally we went no kids to 2. They went back, and then we're like, well, that was a lot, and how do you unpack that? And foster care and there's several officers here that have gone through foster care, and that's actually been a really great resource to talk with them. And then that we closed, and then we went from 0 to 3.
Right.
A 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 6-week-old.
Yeah.
And the oldest or the 2 oldest, they were nonverbal. And there was neglect in the family, and the baby was born with drugs. So we went not only from 0 to 3, but we went from 0 to 3 with also some special circumstances and needs. That was a lot.
Because you want to go back to work for a break at that point.
I never, when I've heard people, they're like, oh, they're working a lot of overtime, or they stay late because it's bedtime.
Yeah.
And, or I was like, ha, ha, ha.
Yeah.
I legit had to have a intentional conversation with myself to be like, you're not doing that.
Not doing it, meaning you're not
going to be staying late if you don't have to stay late because you want to get out of the bedtime, bath time thing.
Right.
And it becomes it creeps in pretty easily. And it's just a true, honest thing where it's like, and right now we only have that 1 baby.
Right.
You have 12, so.
You got a football team.
Yeah. So that became very real and very quick. And then the 2 older ones went back with their dad. So we're navigating this case, which has become chaotic, and it takes up a lot of our time. So all of that unpacking to say the hobbies and everything, what do you do outside? It's just surviving.
Keep kids alive. Yeah.
Family time.
And I guess that is a hobby, the family time. And there's nothing better than going home and seeing the cutest little thing ever whip her head around and come demon crawling towards you because she's like, oh, look, this person's back that I love. And at the same time, also heart-wrenching because she may not stay. The emotional part of that, it has been such a push and pull that, again, going back to the expectations, we knew, because I've had conversations with people, well, you signed up for it, you should have known. That is easy to say, and yes, it is true. You know on paper how this process works, but to literally deal with it in real time doesn't make the emotion go away. Right. So that it's just I don't even know how to describe how you love someone and also try to hold up a barrier so that you don't get destroyed.
Yeah.
Emotionally.
That would be tough.
And I'm still trying to work on that. Being very vocal. Today is not a day. Today the CPS, and it normally surrounds CPS texting me or calling us and any updates, which usually end with, we don't know what's happening.
Right.
I'm like, you can tell my mood changes. And so it's been a hard thing, but it's been interesting to kind of learn. And lately here, I feel like I've just been rambling about, they're like, how's everything? I'm like, do you really want to know? Because I don't have enough time to tell you. But I feel like I have good support, and that's a good thing.
So have y'all talked about, I guess it's just the all-out adoption where that's your baby and you don't have to worry about, okay, maybe later the dad may come back into the picture and now
so we've talked about adoption. The private adoptions is still expensive.
Oh, okay.
And that's still different than CPS adoption.
That doesn't make sense to me.
There's a lot of different
You have
echelons.
kids
We could
that need
do
a
probably a
place.
part 2, part 3, 4, 5. If you,
So
if
that's
we
why
could, but
Angelina Jolie can just spend the money because it's
so
super
and
expensive.
there's expenses to all of it. There's fostering, there's foster to adopt, there's adoption only. But if you do adoption only, you're waiting years and years and years and years.
Really?
You just because you don't know when a kid's going to become available, and it's nuts to me because
like your kid's
in our
available
job, our job, we come around homes, and I'm calling CPS like several times a month because of things that happen in the home, that calls we go on, and I've never been so disappointed in like a government system.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm with
Which is, we work for a city government here, and it's obviously different than. And I just been put in a lot of new places lately, mentally, dealing with those challenges, and it's out of control.
Yeah.
So, at the same time that we're taking it in strides. The case is almost up. We just got to deal with it. And so, how do I deal with it?
Go home and clean.
I do a lot of cleaning. Talking to Lane helps because I'm like, my mind's racing. I don't need answers from you. I'm just saying he's like, just, and listen.
Yeah.
So that's what we do a lot. And then I also go to therapy.
That's good.
I was gonna say,
therapy is big around. Therapy is big around this department, which is great.
I was going to say, I stay over there.
That is, if we talk about changes of the department over the years, if that is one thing that should be put to the front of it, that is just, I think it's cool. I think it's unique. I think a lot of departments are trying to do that just to kind of obviously foster that good mental space, but it's not the granola crunchy, a lot of those keywords that people use in mental health world. It's just I don't want to sit here and talk all day and ramble about the same thing over and over to you guys. I'll go talk to somebody else and then we can bounce it. It's just good to have that outlet.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Well, you've been a complete disappointment because
Sorry.
I thought we were going to sit down and banner and BS and joke and it was going to be funny, and it was just super serious the whole time.
Well, I do have a funny story.
Did you actually think of one?
Yeah, I did.
I'm not trying to be rude, but they'll yell at us.
It's
if
not.
we go
It's not really that
past a
funny.
certain-
Actually, it kind of was funny for a little bit.
Okay.
But way back in the day,
Funny or embarrassing?
probably both.
Okay, cool.
Not so much embarrassing. I mean, not anymore. It's been several years, but way back in the day when we had paper tickets in FTO, I'm told to write this guy a ticket for some taillight violation. I'm writing it out, and I'm so in my head at this point in FTO. I don't know which way is up, and I'm just probably around the time where I'm I gotta take a minute here. But I'm sitting there and I'm writing this ticket out and I'm done, and the FTO usually checks it just to make sure. And he goes, What the hell is this? I'm like, what? He's like, you wrote your name on here. So I wrote myself a ticket because I'm reading. It says name, it says first name, last name, and I'm filling it out like a test or something I'm it's asked personal information here, and then we'll get to the rest. And so that ticket was I want to say it was passed around to several people for sure.
Yeah.
Because then you have to like do a citation dismissal.
Right.
So
Yeah, see, I've never done that.
well,
Have you ever written yourself a ticket then?
I learned early on how to do that, and like it's a formal thing. When you dismiss a citation, it went through a chain of command, and the reason on it, like, I think this is more of like
That's fun.
to point out the fact that I did that.
Right.
It was like you filled out this citation dismissal, you attached a ticket to it. It was a chain of command thing, and you wrote the reason why it's being dismissed. I was like, being dismissed because it was the wrong issue to myself. And like it went through the supervisor, the lieutenant, and
Now, did the violator get his copy?
he got a ticket. Yeah, a different one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, with his correct information.
But they made you do a dismissal on one that you didn't give
Because
the guy?
it still exists as a ticket based on the numbers, right? So it's like they got to keep track of what tickets went where.
You could have just
I
traded it.
was an
I'd just
listen.
said-
Y'all know how it is. I was an FTO.
Yeah.
I'm being told what to do, and I'm writing my own name, and now I'm like even further in my head, and I was like, I don't know.
That's funny.
I was like, can I just go
So
home?
you thought they sent you home so you could think it was a job. You just didn't know. You actually had warrants.
I didn't know.
Yeah,
I
you
didn't.
gotta wait for us
to
Yeah, I
clear.
didn't know what time off was at that point. I was like, is this a good thing?
Yeah, time served.
Well, I hate to cut off, man, because we have like 200
Yeah.
more things we could talk about. But
That's awesome.
Part
appreciate
2.
you, appreciate you coming in.
Yeah.
Good time.
Oh, I'm glad you all had me, and hopefully you get some good
Good stuff.
bits.
Always offer the chance. You have any words of advice you want to offer to anybody?
I feel like I gave a lot of that throughout the.
All right.
No, I just think though, to like recap, if you're a brand new cop, I wouldn't say like soul searching, but that's part of really taking the idea of do ride-alongs, do things to expose yourself, talk to like long-term cops, really get the idea of what actually is going on, because then you're going to get your real idea when you actually do it.
Yep.
To help prepare you for that, at least close that gap. And then lateral officers, you already know what you're doing. In terms, well,
Yeah, ideally.
hopefully you know what you're doing. But if you don't, we'll catch you up to speed. But obviously coming here, having the open-mindedness of joining our crew here, not only to help us on days A for patrol staffing, but to get a better. I think Texas does offer a really good
Yeah.
change of pace for a lot of people. So
And don't talk all the time about how you used to do it.
Yeah.
do not talk.
Nobody cares.
Listen, we get it.
Yeah.
There are other ways of doing things.
And if it was
We
so
do
cool,
stuff here.
Go back.
Yeah. Well, no, stay here. We'll be able to work through it.
You're like, I need days off.
Yeah, we'll work through it, but we'll also remind you
Yeah.
gently that
Shut up.
listen. Well, now you get to do,
Yeah.
not what you used to do. So
Yeah.
sign up,
All right.
join us.
We're gonna shut it down.
Bye.
So, till next time.